In the quiet heart of a small coastal town where the salt in the air mingled with the scent of fresh bread, cooling on wide wooden windowsills, there lived an old woman whose presence carried the weight of forgotten traditions and the lightness of timeless wisdom. People called her Rosa, though everyone younger than her, neighbors, friends, even passing strangers, affectionately referred to her simply as Grandma. Her little home was perched at the end of a winding dirt road, shaded by palm trees and vines of passion fruit that seemed to grow thicker and brighter around her garden, as if nourished by secrets only she knew. Inside, her kitchen was a sanctuary of flavors and whispers from generations past. On the shelves, glass jars held dried herbs and sun-dried peppers. In the cupboards, you could always find flour rice beans and the staples of resilience. And in her notebook, written in curling, patient letters, lay what many believed to be the hidden power of her long-enduring vitality: Grandma's recipes. Those recipes were not ordinary instructions on how to combine ingredients into meals. They were woven with memory, intuition, and something deeper that no amount of schooling could replicate. Each dish, whether a simple broth or a dense loaf of bread, seemed to carry with it a force that could awaken the spirit. People came to her not only for food, but for comfort and renewal, for in every spoonful of her soups, in every slice of her cakes, there seemed to be a piece of her unshakable energy, a quiet reminder that life, even when heavy with worries, could still be savored. In her world, cooking was less about technique and more about transmitting a vibration of care and strength. She used to say with a smile that carried the certainty of countless seasons lived that food was never only for the body, it was for the soul, for the mind, for the invisible threads that bound one heartbeat to another. "You see," she would tell the children who watched her stir steaming pots with wooden spoons polished by time, "everything we eat carries energy, and that energy becomes us. So let it be good energy. Let it be clean. Let it be given with love." The phrase energy and energy was more than just repetition for effect in her speech. For her, it was a mantra, a way to express the endless cycle by which the universe gave and received. Energy was not static. It flowed, transformed, returned. When she cooked, she was offering her strength to those around her, and in return, their laughter, their gratitude, their renewed vigor brought energy back to her. It was a rhythm, a current, a circle that never broke, and that is why she seemed never to tire, why her back remained straight even at 79, and why her eyes still sparkled with a brightness that made younger people pause in wonder. One of the most unusual yet celebrated of her concoctions was something people initially mocked, then grew to crave. In her blender, with the hum that filled her small kitchen with anticipation, she combined two ingredients that most would never think to mix: coconut water blended with kale. At first glance, it seemed absurd. Why combine the sweetness of tender coconut water with the bitter strength of kale leaves plucked straight from her garden? Yet those who tasted it often found themselves reaching for a second glass, surprised by the balance, the way sweetness met earthiness, the way the body seemed to respond instantly, as though awakening from a fog. Her grandchildren, who once wrinkled their noses at the greenish drink, later admitted that after long afternoons of playing in the sun or after the fatigue of studying for exams late into the night, this was the one thing that restored them. "It hydrates and invigorates," she explained, not as a marketing slogan but as a fact of life she had observed and tested on herself through decades of experience. Coconut water, she insisted, carried within it the ocean's memory, a trace of minerals that quenched thirst deeper than plain water ever could. Kale, on the other hand, was a gift from the soil, dense with strength, iron, and the whisper of chlorophyll, which she said was nature's secret language of vitality. Together they created a drink that was neither luxurious nor complicated, but rather honest, direct, and deeply effective. Athletes in town, hearing of this from whispers that spread from family to family, began to show up at her door. At first, they laughed at the idea of a grandmother knowing anything about performance, but once they tried the drink, their skepticism melted. They left her house with bottles of it tucked under their arms, promising to return. But the recipes were more than remedies or health hacks. They were stories. Each time Grandma Rosa prepared something, she told its history, weaving in the memory of her own mother, who had taught her of the times when the family had nothing but a handful of rice and a few wild greens, of the laughter around firesides. When the food was little yet, the company was abundant. The recipes connected the living to the departed, and they carried with them an invisible thread to the future, as if ensuring that the wisdom would not vanish with her. To drink her concoction was to partake not only in flavor, but in lineage, in memory, in continuity. One summer, when the town was struck by a drought that drained both the rivers and the spirit of its people, her recipes became more than comfort. They became survival. The heat was relentless. Days stretched into weeks without a single drop of rain, and many fell ill with fatigue, headaches, and despair. Yet in her small kitchen, Rosa continued blending coconuts and kale, offering the drink to those who came weak and exhausted. Farmers who thought they would collapse in their fields swore that a single cup gave them enough strength to work another few hours. Children, flushed and feverish, regained their playfulness after sipping from her clay cups. It was not magic, at least not in the sense of spells or incantations. But it was a kind of alchemy that reminded everyone that nature still held treasures, even in scarcity, if only one knew where to look. The town began to change. Slowly, people started to see food differently, to respect the simple leaves growing in their gardens, to save coconut water not as waste, but as a gift. They began to write down their own family recipes, inspired by Rosa's insistence that memory must be preserved. Young mothers asked her how to feed their children not just for growth, but for resilience, and she would repeat, energy and energy. What you give becomes what you are, and what you are gives back to the world. That cycle is never ending. For Rosa herself, there was no desire for fame or recognition. She did not sell her drinks or publish her recipes. She simply gave them when they were needed. And in that act of giving, she felt richer than any treasure could make her. One evening, sitting on her porch while the ocean breeze carried the smell of salt and hibiscus, she told her eldest granddaughter something she had never spoken aloud before. "These recipes," she whispered, "they are not mine. They belong to life itself. I was only the one who listened closely enough to remember them." The granddaughter, clutching her notebook and pen, realized in that moment that she was inheriting more than instructions. She was receiving a philosophy, a way of being, a vision of how nourishment was not only for the flesh, but for the unseen dimensions of existence. In time, people from faraway places heard of the woman at the end of the dirt road whose kitchen held something extraordinary. Travelers came, skeptics arrived, and all left touched, not only by the food and drink, but by the sense of care that lingered in the air like incense. The coconut water blended with kale became more than a drink. It became a symbol of resilience, of simplicity, of the beauty found in unexpected unions. And whenever someone would ask her why it worked so well, she would laugh softly, brushing her flour-dusted hands on her apron, and reply, "Because it hydrates and invigorates, and because it was given with love. That is all." The legend of Grandma's recipes would outlive her body, carried in the hearts of those who had tasted not just her food, but her presence. For in the end, energy was not only a mantra, not only a philosophy, it was a truth embodied in every dish she prepared and every smile she gave.